So let's all bow in. And welcome to the Buddhist Path of Awakening course. As we proceed through the profound treasury of the ocean of Dharma, we're approaching the end of Volume 2, dealing with the Mahayana stage of the path. This 3-volume set is a compilation of the talks, a digest of the talks that Trungpa Rinpoche gave over a period of about 13 years. Every year he would take 150 to 250 students away to a retreat for 3 months, combination of practice and study. And that retreat was divided into 3 stages: the Hinayana stage, the lesser vehicle stage of the path, the Mahayana, the greater vehicle, and the Vajrayana, the adamantine or indestructible vehicle stage of the path. And during those periods, he would give talks in the evenings. During the day, senior students would give classes as well. There was always a period of study, and then a period of practice and study, and then a period of practice, solid practice like Datun or Nyington or Weekton, and then a period of practice and study. And he would give these talks in the evening, usually. And they have been digested into this 3-volume set, and we are working our way through it. And we are up to the Bodhisattva path, the 10 stages, the 10 Bhumis. Last week we covered Bhumis 1 through 7, and this week we will cover Bhumis 8 through 10. And next week we will finish this book with the 11th Bhumi. I think we're probably going to take an extra week at the suggestion of John Tyler, which I think was an excellent suggestion, and do a review of the first 2 volumes, an overview. And then the week after that, start in on volume 3. So tonight, we're dealing with the 8th, 9th, and 10th Bhumis. The first 7 are really the feeling of a journey. You're making a journey in the first 7 Bhumis up through the 7th Bhumi. There's a feeling of progress, and that you are progressing. From the 8th Bhumi on, there's more a feeling that you have arrived. And in fact, Trungpa Rinpoche says that you begin to become a great being, a Mahasattva, not just a Bodhisattva, an awakened being. The question is, what have you awakened to? What you've awakened to is your basic being. This fundamental awareness that pervades us all the time. It goes by different names. The Nyingmas call it Rikpa, which means seeing. That's the Tibetan for Vidya, which means seeing. The Kagyus call this ordinary mind. And I've invited you, actually, each one of you, as a group and individually, to meet with me and talk to me about this. I think it's very important. And so you have that invitation to discuss this basic state of mind. Really, you could call it meditation, but it's meditation in the deepest sense of the word. And it's what enables the Bodhisattva to traverse this path, constantly coming back to just simple awareness of this. It's kind of the, you might say, the real meaning of Vipassana, awareness practice. So he says, up through the seventh Bhumi, you still have a feeling of a journey, a sense of proceeding somewhere. But the Mahasattva level, this is the eighth Bhumi, is perpetual. You are feeling like fully ripened fruit. You have arrived. There will still be lapses. You'll go off into dream. But then you come back to this simple awareness of this right now. We could all do it right now. Let's just do this. I'd like everybody to just take a seat, take a good posture, and bring your eyes onto something other than your computer screen, I think. Take a look at anything. I'm viewing out the window at a tree branch hanging. And whatever it is, that simple, clear awareness right now, that's it. It takes no effort. In fact, effort only obscures it. Effort is thinking that you have to be doing something different or better or worse or whatever. And then that thought evaporates, and here we are, looking at wherever you have your eyes aimed, aware of this space, and that's clear, open awareness. This is the heart of our practice, to come back to this, letting go of thoughts of progress, thoughts of not getting anywhere on the path, thoughts of lunch tomorrow, whatever it might be. And just here we are, tuned in to this space now. This is the main practice in our lives, to come back to this. And this is what the Bodhisattva has been perfecting all the way along the path. Developing confidence to relax into this basic, clear, effortless state of awareness that is who we are. It's our birthright. It's what we're born with. One lets go of self-doubt, of ambition. All of those are just dreams, imagination, and they live in thought. And when you let go of them, here we are. Right here, clear awareness in this open space. I would say you can relax now, but that's silly. There is no greater relaxation than this. Everything else is just dreaming. So I'm going to read you the second paragraph on page 408, because I just thought it was beautiful. That's what I wrote to myself. He says, you could visualize the Bodhisattva path as a journey. It's the journey to this open awareness. What an irony. We're coming back to where we already were. A journey in which you set sail from a huge continent, namely the samsaric world. The samsaric world is the world of worry, unhappiness, wishing things were otherwise, lack of confidence. And you cross the ocean to get to an island you have seen. That island consists of the first 7 Bhumis and the corresponding Paramitas, and they all depend on this awareness. But then, having crossed that particular island and achieved the 7 conventional Paramitas, generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditation, prajna, and upaya, which we've discussed. You take another boat. Now you are on an endless journey, a final journey. You have no more islands to cross. You have left the samsaric world, and you have completed the first 7 Bhumis. You have gone through the process necessary in order to go beyond, into the larger ocean, the greater endness or beginningness, for that matter. And that's this open space, without any design, without any purpose, without any direction. It's just here. So on the 8th Bhumi, moving right along to being a Mahasattva, he says you develop an enormous comprehension of other people because you're just so present, without design, without purpose, without agenda, just ready for anything. And so when people come to you and present themselves to you at this level of understanding, you see completely who they are. Trungpa Rinpoche used to say it took him about 7 seconds to know everything he needed to know in order to understand and help the person sitting across from him. 7 seconds. It's all because he was so open, sitting there without design. So you see through people, you know them, and you understand completely what dharmic approach you might take with them. Tremendous communication takes place, and it did with him, which goes beyond the physical and verbal level to the environmental level. Up to the 7th Bhumi, the one before, spiritual materialism was a problem, as well as basic materialism, meaning we wanted to get something for this imaginary self, and we were lost in that dream. That dream is anxious, it's mean, it leads us into cruelties. And that's what we were constantly in and out of, up through the 7th Bhumi. The lords of form, speech, and mind. Though that means that we were trying to get material things, we were trying to manipulate the world and ourselves intellectually, that's speech, and mind means achieve certain mental states. Up to the 7th Bhumi. All of that still, we lapse into that. We come back from this clear, open awareness, and we lapse into thought, which is always about the 3 lords of materialism. He says, now you have less. Those psychological materialism and the need for basic security keep coming back. It's like you come into this awareness, but that need for some kind of security, physical, psychological, keeps coming back and haunting you, and you feel like, oh, I've got to get something. But at the 8th Bhumi, spiritual materialism, the desire to manipulate spirituality to get something is not a problem. Here, the paramita is called pranidhana, in Tibetan munlam, which means aspiration. And the idea is, this is the paramita that you come to, is that you take a bigger version of vision, that you can really engage with the world fearlessly, creatively. What holds us back is always we get lost in thoughts about self-doubt. But here, pranidhana, you develop a kind of fearlessness and bigger vision. And I thought I'd tell a story that I actually heard last night I go to meetings of the Rime Society. And somebody told a version of this story, but I was there for this, so I know it. In the very, very early days of the community here in Boulder, early 1970s, people were hippies and trying to make a living by doing crafts. And a bunch of these craftsmen got together and decided, wouldn't it be great if we had a common space and we could each have our own bench and make our stuff, you know? Some people were making leather clothes, some people were making pot pipes out of deer antler, who knows what. I remember one of my friends was making these belt buckles out of brass and then selling them, you know, on the streets of Boulder. So they had a meeting with Trungpa Rinpoche, and they had found a space. It was above Art Cleaners over on 13th Street at Arapahoe. And they had a price, and it was for rent. And there was a discussion, and everybody was worried that they wouldn't be able to pay the rent. They wouldn't be able to make enough money to do it. And Rinpoche kept urging them to do it. And he's saying, you can do it. Take the leap, he would say. Take the leap. And he would say, yes, but Rinpoche, you know, it's so much money and we've added it up what each one of us thinks we can make. And I don't know if we can do it and blah, blah, blah. And he kept saying, oh, yes, you can do it. Take the leap. Finally, they decided, no, it was too much money and they weren't going to do it. And he said, okay, that's all right. I'll love you anyway. And this groan went up. You know, it was the Jewish mother trip. I'll love you anyway. And they did it. And they made the rent. And then for a while, for a year or two or three, I can't remember, they had that craft studio. That's the pranidhana. That's the vision. Take the leap. You can leap into creativity and celebration. He says at the 8th Bhumi, you develop this vision and you are immovable in it. That's because you're immovable because you've come back to this clear, open awareness right now. And you rest in it and it's not moving. When you're movable, it's because you're lost in thoughts. Oh, I'm worrying about this and maybe I should do that. And oh, what about the other? But when you rest in awareness, there is no movement. It's right here. We can do it anytime. Come back to it. And he says the highest speed of all is not to move. It's to rest in this awareness. You can do anything in it. He says a vision, he said, when people come to you and they need help, the vision of how to help will just arise. Mahasattvas, great beings, do not have to think in terms of strategy. It comes to them. It's so clear. It's obvious in the moment. He says on the 8th Bhumi, the Bodhisattva begins to give up the concept of deep understanding. It's like the idea of depth. It's an illusion. The Dharma is no longer regarded as understanding. It's not even a state of being. It is just there. It's this, here, now. It's not like I understand something. It's right here. It's all around. And as for false notions, false ideas, misunderstandings, you don't have to destroy them deliberately. You don't have to try and get rid of them or correct them. They just leave because they have no place. The clear, effortless, thoughtless understanding is right here all the time. On this Bhumi, you develop 10 powers. It's just that they love to elaborate this stuff. The first is the power over life. You're no longer concerned about survival because you're not thinking about that. Survival is a paranoid fear. Power over mind. You approach your mental activity as inspiration rather than something out of control that might take you over. So when you have thoughts, you see them and you say, aha, wonder where that came from. And what does that mean? And what is that telling me? Power over belongings. You're not a slave to your belongings because you don't renounce anything. You don't have to push something away and say, no, I'm never going to eat chocolate again. No, I'm not going to drink alcohol again. Because when you do that, you become a slave to it. Power over karma means you don't have hopes or fears and for your future and fears about your past. Power over aspiration. With aspiration, there is enormous openness, vision, and future orientation. You bring the future into the present. You see it now. Power over miracles. And what miracles means is that you just are here doing whatever needs to be done in the right way, and things happen magically. Power over wisdom. With this is the source of wisdom is endless. It's right here in the present moment. It's in what we are. Wisdom is this space in which everything arises and is self-revealed. It's called jnana in Sanskrit, rikpa in Tibetan. And finally, the power over the Dharma. With this power, the Bodhisattva becomes the true holder of the Dharma. You become a Dharma king or queen, Dharma ruler, monarch. And the reason is, it's not a matter of power, of control. It's a matter of knowing, of being here, a combination of being and knowing in this present moment. The ninth Bhumi is called good intellect. And here the epitome of discriminating wisdom is achieved. That's because in this clear knowingness, we see so clearly. We become much more intelligent. It's like Rinpoche being able to understand a person sitting in front of him within 7 seconds. It's much higher than ordinary intellect, being smart, being able to do crossword puzzles or solve mathematical problems or memorize poems or whatever. And the paramita of this Bhumi, the ninth Bhumi of wisdom, good intellect, is power. And this power is, again, not power over things. It's not samsaric power, but it is based on rejoicing and fearlessness, which gives you immense power. And there are 4 types of discriminating wisdom, discriminating awareness, which develop in this Bhumi. The first is the power, the discriminating awareness of Dharma, that you understand cultures and words and languages of all the realms of samsara. You can see them so clearly in yourself when they arise, if they arise at this stage of the path, probably not, and certainly in others. The second one is the meaning of or understanding of words, rather than just letters and definitions, the culture behind them, how they resonate and how they influence. The third is called awareness of definition. It understands the significance of everything, what things actually mean, what they portend, how they fit. And the fourth kind of discriminating awareness is confidence, total confidence. This is perhaps the most important aspect. It goes beyond being unafraid. It means you have no notion of poverty at all, no notion that you're lacking in any way. And then finally, these fundamental confidence manifests as 8 great treasures, which I think I'm going to pass on right now and move on to the 10th Bhumi, which is called the Chirki Trin in Tibetan, Dharma Mega. In Sanskrit, it means the Cloud of Dharma. This is the last achievement of the Bodhisattva before enlightenment. And it's not a cloud in the sense of an obstacle or fuzziness, but it's a cloud that implies richness, inexhaustible, pure, clean richness. Your power and confidence are great, but you can't quite make out the details. He says you're like a nearsighted monarch on his balcony, unable to see the troops clearly. But you can emanate millions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas out of your pores. It's said that the Bodhisattva at this level is just resting in this awareness so completely. And yet the Bodhisattva knows that there is something holding them back from complete enlightenment. And what it is, they suddenly realize, is that they feel that something holding them back from complete enlightenment, a lack of confidence. And when they realize that, presto, they pass beyond that into the 11th Bhumi, which we're going to talk about next week. The paramita of this, the transcendent virtue of this Bhumi is jnana, wisdom, which is what I've been talking about all along. It's the main driver of the path from beginning to end, but especially in the last 4 Bhumis. It's this open, clear, effortless awareness that is without content of any particular kind. It's not I and other. It's right here all the time. And this is the paramita of this Bhumi, jnana. He says, with jnana, even the slightest notion of journey is freed, except for a faint recollection. That faint sense of recollection remains until one achieves enlightenment, which is the 11th Bhumi. He says, this Bhumi is journeyless. There's only a faint memory left over of journey, like fragrance left in an empty bottle of perfume. That's the analogy for samsara. You have this, the bottle is empty of samsara, this world is, and yet you can feel, you can sense, you can smell samsara, that you're leaving it. And that sense of leaving samsara is samsara again, sense of journey. He says here the Bodhisattva sees the phenomenal world in a very brilliant way, like the brilliance of the full moon or seeing the mountains in moonlight. And that brilliance is because we've given up I, other thought, journey, ambition, self-aggrandizement of any kind, even the most subtle. It's resting in awareness. You're giving up purposefulness. You're giving up wanting to get somewhere, and instead resting in this awareness, which is natural to us, of this present moment, and which involves complete responsiveness. You're constantly in an act of responsiveness to your environment. If you weren't, you would be fixated on something. But because you're so completely open and free, you're free to respond. They call it rolpa, play. You're in a constant state of play, and there's constant art. The way you lift a teacup, as he used to demonstrate, can be art, as well as creating a painting. There's constant freedom from ambition. Ambition is such a burden. And at this level, the 10th Bhumi, you receive empowerments from the tradition, from your teacher. And they're necessary because they confirm you in your confidence, the confidence to let go of fear, of self-aggrandizement. He says, since you were a samsaric person for a long time, you still need to be encouraged, initiated, and enthroned. Your final enthronement is called the enthronement of light, in which it is proclaimed that the Bodhisattva is a great being, a Mahasattva. You are proclaimed to be the child of the Buddha and a would-be Buddha. And then he says this, at this point, the only thing you have left to develop is your confidence. Self-doubt is ego's last refuge. He says the last problem before the attainment of enlightenment is poverty mentality, a feeling of lack, a faint fear that your inspiration might go wrong. That desire, that fear, that wish to hold on to security remains an obstacle until the Bodhisattva achieves the Vajra-like samadhi. That's enlightenment itself. That's complete lock into awareness in this present moment. Now he has some comments about the journey through these Bhumis. He says some people stay in certain Bhumis longer, other people in different ones. We're all different that way. But up to the 8th Bhumi, the journey is slow because the first 7 Bhumis are impure. What does that mean they're impure? It means that there's still a pronounced watcher, watching and saying, now I'm doing it, now I'm not. This is good, that's bad. It's getting thinner and thinner. That's what allows the Bodhisattva to progress. And the Bodhisattva keeps coming back from that watcher into this open awareness in the present moment. But then the Bodhisattva says, oh yeah, there's my open awareness in the present moment. There's my vidya, my jnana. And that's the watcher again. And that's what's falling away progressively through the Bhumis, but it's still there, especially through the 7th. Bhumis from the 8th Bhumi on are called the pure Bhumis, and you advance much more quickly because the watcher is disappearing, ego. It's hard to tell where you are in the Bhumis, however. He says there is a very slow and ordinary, almost insignificant change. But you only become aware of that change when you look back at what was, how you were, rather than by seeing what you are at any one point. So you look back and you realize, yes, there's been a change. I'm relaxing. I'm becoming more aware, however you describe it. He says you will have some understanding and experience of the Bhumis even before you enter them, even if you're only a beginner, much less when you're in them. And now in the Mahayana, in the Bhumis, enormous suggestions of the Vajrayana begin to happen. There is the possibility of joy. Such joy is the vanguard of the great joy or great bliss described in the Vajrayana, in the Tantras. So you begin to experience a feeling of happiness that you are progressing on the path, and that you're understanding that you can relax and let go and rest in the awareness that you already have, that was there all along. The Vajrayana approach to the Bhumis is that you could achieve Buddhahood on the spot. And at the same time, you have to go through a process. Tathagata Garbha, or Buddha nature, is possible. It is not just possible, it is so. It is what we are. And we are beginning to more and more realize this more and more as we progress along through the Bhumis. He says, you must not get carried away. However, once you join the path, the attainment of enlightenment is becoming a strong possibility. And then, as ordinary people, as lay Mahayanists, that's what we are, as potential bodhisattvas, the way to work on the Bhumi is by practicing the Paramitas. So, if you're feeling stingy, you could be deliberately generous. If you're feeling slothful, lazy, you could practice discipline, which means coming into the present and doing what is called for. If you're experiencing impatience, you could get a grip and practice patience. I'll just admit, this is an admission. I get very impatient when I'm brushing my teeth at night. I have one of these electric toothbrushes that goes through 30 seconds per quadrant, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I'm in the first quadrant. 30 seconds, when's it going to end? Okay. Oh, now I'm in the second quadrant. 30 seconds, when's it going to end? Oh, now I'm halfway through. Still got half to go. And I'm thinking this, and I know that what makes the impatience is those thoughts of wishing it was over. And when you let go of those thoughts, suddenly patience is there without effort. It's a practice. You can do that with all of these virtues. See, what makes them transcendent is you let go of the thought that is creating the problem, the stinginess. Oh gosh, if I give that away, I'll be poor. You let go of that thought, and then you are free to be generous. The same with the patience, slothfulness, discipline, laziness. You practice exertion. You let go of that thought of, oh, I just want to lie around, and get active. Find inspiration. Distraction. You practice meditation. And here meditation means coming back to the present. Stupidity. Stupidity is deliberate, almost deliberate, let's say, involvement in thoughts about something, so that you can't see exactly truly what that thing is. So you meet someone for the first time, and they remind you of someone else, and you're having these thoughts about that, what they remind you of, and you're thinking, oh, this person reminds me of someone I disliked, and feelings of dislike arise. There's no prajna there. Or you might say, this person reminds me of somebody that I'm attracted to, and you start feeling, feelings of attraction. There's no prajna there because you're not seeing that person as they are. So when stupidity arises, you come back. Always, the way you do it is you realize that stupidity, each one of these unvirtuous things, is the result of thinking. And you see it, let it go, and you come back to the virtue. Unskillfulness. You're being stupid about the way to handle a situation. And you let it go, you see the situation as it is, and you become skillful. Thinking small. That's like those people with starting the craft studio. No, we can't make the rent. You let it go, you take the leap, he kept saying to them. And you experience inspiration. Fear and sadness. And the cure for that is power. Fearlessness, rejoicing. You let go of that fear. The thoughts, that always lives in thoughts. Sadness always lives in thoughts. And you let go and you experience fearlessness and rejoicing. And finally, a sense of journey. This is the very subtle problem. A sense of journey. I'm on a journey. I'm not quite there yet. You let that thought go and you're here. The journey is over. For this moment or for a long time. So this is what we do as Mahayanists. It's the way we practice the transcendent virtues. And what it takes is that you have to realize when you're in a state of stinginess, slothfulness, impatience, laziness, distraction, stupidity, unskillfulness, small thinking, and fear, sadness. You have to see it and realize that you're doing that. And then you can let it go, just like you let go of the thought, oh, I wish my teeth were already finished brushing. And you're awake. He says the opposite of the paramitas are not regarded as pitfalls. This is interesting, but as reminders that come from working with reality. So when you experience stinginess, you don't regard this, oh, that's terrible, I'm just being stingy. It's an opportunity. You can see it and you can let it go and you can be generous. The same with all of these things. Take a look at that chapter. You want to make a list of all of them. Stupidity, that you can come back to intelligence. You can let it go. There are opportunities, each one of these, but you have to be able to recognize it in yourself. When you're being stupid, when you're being slothful, when you're thinking small and not taking the leap. He says, in fact, there are no pitfalls. There is only continual growth. It is like aging. You can't go backwards in time or regress. Once you begin to practice, once you step foot on the path, you can say to yourself, oh, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just terribly slow. I can't get it. But meanwhile, as long as you get your butt down on the cushion and watch your breath and come back from thought, you're on the path. And eventually, it just gets more and more and more. It works. And then he says of this, the paramitas, rather than trying to apply the paramitas in a linear fashion, you just apply them all at once or randomly, whichever one is needed in the moment. And then he talks about the spiritual friend at the end and the need for the spiritual friend. And that's him coming through people like me and the other people who studied with him. It's very necessary. Otherwise, there's no message. It's a mutual journey between the teacher and yourself. He says, someone at the level of the seventh Bhumi no longer needs the spiritual friend's heavy-handed approach. He's speaking of himself here. But until you reach the 10th Bhumi level, you still need the watchful eye of the Kalyana Mitra, the spiritual friend. And after that, the Sambhogakaya Buddhas take over. They are really the essence of being awake. So he says there's no possibility of latching onto spiritual materialism on this path, the true path, as long as you're getting the true instructions, the true lineage, the true transmission. Spiritual materialism is really gross. Remember things like transcendental meditation, you're going to levitate. People thought they would levitate if you practice TM enough. That was a big motivator. There's spiritual materialism in one of its crudest forms, most naive. So we can have a discussion. Big.
Yeah, I was just wondering about as you progress along the path of the Boomies, where self-delusion fits in and delusions of any kind, like maybe false political ideas or conspiracy theory, like if you're really into conspiracy theories, say. And at some point, is it just assumed that when you get to a certain point in the path that all those delusions about yourself and about the world fall away? Or, yeah, that's my question.
Great, great question. Yeah, they do, but it's at a fairly advanced level of the path, and we're talking about the Mahayana path, the path of the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva means awakened being. What are they awakened to? They're awakened to the realization that this clear awareness that you have right now of these words, this face, this screen, is all there is. And not only that, it's more than enough. That the deeper we come into this, values change, intelligence is redefined and becomes more powerful and brighter. And the thoughts of like those paranoid conspiracy theorists fall away, along with a lot of other thoughts that are paranoid. And in a sense, almost all thought is paranoid because it's always about protecting this imaginary me. So it's involved in whenever we're having these thoughts, these paranoid thoughts, we leave. We leave mentally. We're not quite here. We're in the dream. And as soon as we have learned that the point is to come back to awareness, every time you come back, those thoughts dissolve into thin air. So, yeah, I would say that meditation is the cure. And it's not just for paranoid fantasies, it's for any kind of insanity, which always lies in thoughts, paranoid thoughts about me and the world, and that.
Yeah, I just wondered if you'd ever seen anyone get that far along the path and still be holding on to some pretty conspiratorial type of or paranoid type of ideas and um,
Well, in this Sangha, Trungpa Rinpoche was so fierce about any kind of materialism, and it pervaded all his students, and it burns out that kind of thing. It just does. Because materialism is always about protecting me in some way, self-aggrandizement, building up me. Whereas meditation is about letting that go and coming into the real world, which is just this world right now. You let go of these paranoid fantasies. In a sense, all thought is paranoid. All thought is about protecting me, self-aggrandizing me. We just don't need it. It's painful. Thanks. Great question. It's all around us, isn't it? All these amazing paranoid fantasies. I've got a neighbor who's an anti-vaxxer, rabid. Oh my God. The emails that I got from him until I just stopped responding and then he stopped sending them. Wow. Talk about fantastical. Randy does something, I think. Okay. Oops, you're muted.
Thanks. Thank you, John. This is sort of an adjunct or to what the question was just asked. So if you lapse into thought or dream, is ego always present in that, or are these sometimes just thoughts without ego? But it sounded like you were saying, since all thoughts are really paranoid to begin with, and they do all have an element of me, sounds like maybe that ego is always present in thoughts and dreams.
I think it is. I think it is, one way or another, subtly or grossly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So even if you're at the ninth Boomi and you suddenly were having a thought or what, lost in a dream, ego is there. You're not totally in egolessness, but
Right.
then you just come back.
But I don't think at the ninth Boomi, as I understand it, you're having, there's still subtle, there's a subtle ego. And that ego is the idea of progress, of achieving enlightenment, and of having overcome confusion. And it just gets thinner and thinner, that notion of improvement, on the path.
Right.
And the last Bhumi, Dharma Mega, the cloud of Dharma, is when the Bodhisattva realizes that something's holding him or her back. And what it is the idea that something's holding him or her back, that there's something to be held back. It is just complete acceptance that this world right now is it. And it's an opportunity for us to play, to be creative, to make beautiful things of all kinds. They say that the enlightened beings, of the beyond the Vajrayana, are just in a constant state of play until they burn that up, and then they just disappear, unless they come back out of compassion for confused beings. And there are lots of those who do. And I think of that even as that the Bodhisattva, it's not so much that they're feeling sorry for anybody, but rather that they were engaged in a conversation and they want to come back to keep the conversation going because it's so much fun. Play. The term is rolpa. Enlightened beings are constantly engaged in rolpa, play. I'm just
sounds egotistical to me.
It does? Say more.
Well, then it's all about what I want. I want to keep playing.
No, it's all about
having so much fun. Screw that enlightenment stuff. I want to go back and play around some more.
Well, that's good. That sounds very enlightened. Yeah, that sounds very enlightened. It's a dance, they call it, Dance, play, making love. Making love's a big metaphor for it too. Thank you. Jane?
Yeah, I feel while I'm reading these chapters, I'm taking a leap of faith a second. But I came across something when you were talking about your anti-vaxxer, and maybe you could help me out. On page 111, we're in the middle of the 10 powers and the 8th Bhumis. He talks about page 411.
Yeah, okay.
In the middle, the power over birth, the 5th power. Your birth is not subject to national neurosis or national psychology, and it is not biased by genetics. The genetics is where it's hard for me to take a leap here. You have free choice of rebirth. You have control over where you will be born, who your parents will be. Only the Bodhisattva of the 8th Bhumi has the major mark a spiritual achievement.
Yes.
Hard for me to take this leap of, is that denying your corporal self, your cells, your DNA, your appearance? What is that?
Yeah, it is in a way.
Okay, that's what I was afraid you'd say.
Because it's the transcendence of karma. And what karma is being bound by the rules that we believe in. And this is open space. Now, that doesn't mean that you might not be reborn, as a human being. There's a kind of karma that goes on even with enlightenment. So, for instance, the Buddha, after he achieved enlightenment, lived to supposedly about the age of, 80, I think? And he had to burn out his karma before he passed, and then he died. But when you burn out your karma, then you're not bound to be reborn in a particular way. Now, understand what rebirth is. It's happening now. Each one of us is being reborn instant by instant. And we've been born into this class. The class will end. We'll be born into something else in our lives. There's a constant death and rebirth that happens at different scales. There's the scale of my whole life. There's the scale of this moment. And what word comes out of my mouth next. And all of that is, when you're confused, is bound by karma. It's the constant attempt to perpetuate I. And the constant, so there's a feeling of, I need to do this in order to protect myself, I. Mm-hmm. And then that leads into rebirth. Mm-hmm. Okay. The Bodhisattva, let's say the enlightened being, no longer is bound by karma and doesn't have to choose to be reborn. They've still got some past karma that's burning up and carrying them forward, like the Buddha did. He was born into this body. But basically, in terms of the future, they're just moving forward with whatever presents itself. So, I don't know if that answers it.
Well, thank you. No, it's very helpful. It really is. And it's very frightening. Very frightening.
Actually, it should be the reverse of frightening. It should be giving tremendous freedom and confidence, because what we're giving up is fear for ourselves. And we're just moving into a constant awareness and enjoyment, which you can experience right now in this present moment. Each one of us can. And in doing it, we give up neurosis, we give up unhappiness, we give up fear by coming into this present. And in this present, there's tremendous intelligence and responsiveness. We're in a constant act of being responsive, intelligently. Because there's no longer anything of thinking about me. There's just awareness of what's coming next.
I'll work on it.
Think of it as
I'm on it, as they say.
The analogies are play, making love, communication. One person speaks, the other person answers, the next person goes back and forth. These are analogies for it. Play, communication, love making. Okay.
Thank you.
I think that the more each one of us comes into this awareness in the present moment, the more confidence and ease we experience, and a sense of appreciation for life. And also we begin to see how the neurosis contained in thought is so mean and nasty that we can let it go.
Tully has his hand up.
Thank you, Barry. John, I have two questions. The first one I should preface probably with an apology, which is that due to my erratic presence at these sessions, you probably have already answered it, but I've been kind of dying to know. I love this prayer for peace that we say at the conclusion by Rinpoche. But I have one question. There's a line, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times. What are the 3 times?
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. No, that's a joke. We used to say that, though, in the early days. The past, present, and future.
Okay. Okay.
And this is
All right.
for us samsaric beings. You know, this isn't enlightened mind, but this is, the idea is that if you cultivate a good state of mind and being, it helps you progress along the path to transcend egotism, ultimately. But you can't do it if you're really suffering. You need to be in a human birth, a good human birth, both literally, it means physically, and psychologically.
Okay, good, thank you. That was question 1. Question 2 has to do with last session. You asked us to send emails to you if we were interested in doing the meditation, whatever, retreat, offsite, week, whatever. Wondered if you could give us an update on that.
No, we don't have a plan. The responses were so various, and I really have to sit down and try and analyze them and see if we could put together a group of people to do a retreat, and then where, you know? So I'm sorry, I don't have a response.
Well, that is a response. I feel for you. You got such varied responses. At any rate, thank you for the update, John. Appreciate it.
Okay. Kurt.
Vicky, I
Oh.
think.
Okay,
And then Kurt, maybe.
Nikki and then Kurt.
Thank you, Barry. I have a question, page 408 at the top. It says, there's definite notion of warfare and destruction. It's not particularly passive, but more like launching an attack. In this attack, prajna is used as a sword and skillful means is the soldier. At the tantric level, we talk about the transmutation of ego, but transmutation is not all that kind and accepting a gesture. It is based on using the corpse of ego and bringing it to life, but in a very enlightened way. I just want to wrap my head around that a little better. Can you speak about that? The corpse of ego. It's like, you know, yay, you can finally get to where, you know, we're kind of making ego less and less and less, and this is the way to do it. It looks fascinating, but I just couldn't. I need help. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, what it means is that you've really begun to understand what ego is, and that you don't want any part of it.
Right.
And
Right.
that every time ego seems to come to life, you know, this corpse starts to raise its head and walk, you can walk away from it. You can come back to awareness. You can opt out of ego. It's dead. It's a corpse. It's not what you want to be anymore. And instead you let it go and you come back to this clear, open awareness, which is without self-reference.
What's the attack part? Prajna is used as a sword. In
Is
this
it-
attack, Prajna is used as a sword, and skillful means is the soldier.
Yeah. Prajna is clear seeing. And it's like you see that ego happening, that habitual thought raising its head again. And the sword of Prajna is this two-edged sword that cuts through dream. It cuts through, theoretically, it cuts through belief in I and belief in other, which basically means that it cuts through dreams. And upaya is skillful means. So by simply seeing ego, your ego, this thought that you're having, this negative thought, whatever it might be a thought about someone else, it might be a thought about yourself. It always involves a lack of self-confidence, a lack of confidence, that you're trying to buttress your feeling of existence. And you slay it with the sword of Prajna. What that means is you see the world as it really is. You come back, you let go of that dream, and you come back into the present. So yeah, it's the attack. He's talking about the attack of, it's really Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of Prajna, of wisdom, who wields that sword. And the upaya is your skill, your growing skill in seeing neurosis and coming back into awareness and letting it go. It's so seductive. It's like watching a painfully bad television show, that's about unhappiness.
Well, it's like Groundhog Day. I have neurosis problems first thing in the morning when I wake up. It's the same thing all the time, and it's overpowering because I'm alone and I just woke up coming up from subconscious, and I feel defenseless. And so yeah, I just
Well, I'd say you could call me, but with the time change,
do that too.
it would be pretty early here. But Trungpa Rinpoche used to say to us that the most dangerous time of the day is when you first wake up in the morning.
Yes, that's me.
You're most subject to depression, hope, and fear, because you come out of dream and you can go right back into it as you lie there in the bed. And he said, this is the time when you are meant to rouse your cheerfulness. Get up, get moving, do what you need to do. Have a cup of coffee, pee, wash your face, brush your teeth, whatever you're going to do. Get going, because you're most subject to the gelgong. The gelgong is the attack of lack of confidence, depression.
I do that, and depression is definitely an issue. And I get up and I'm doing exactly what you're trying to say because I know it, but I'm in a panic about it. I'm in a panic of anxiety. I feel like I'm trying to run away from it, and it's like, this is more ego. This is more being caught. So I know I'm not going to resolve it right away, but this just spoke to me. It's kind of like, it's almost like a dune.
It is. It is indeed.
I gotta attack it, and I gotta resolve it. So thank you. That helps clarify. I feel like that one was for me. So good.
It's funny that we're so subject to it in the early morning when we first wake up. I mean, not everybody, but I bet a lot of people here.
Me, yeah.
Yeah.
I hate it. When I don't know, I used to love mornings. Mornings were just, I guess I was much more bodhisattvish then. But
Can you create a situation that you need to get up for so that you don't lie there in bed ruminating?
I have to. I'm in pain. I wake up in physical pain, so
Yeah,
that's
okay.
with it. So it's all wrapped up with
Oh,
other
yeah.
stuff.
Welcome to old age. We've all got one version of it or another.
This is more of a chronic illness that's gone on for a long time, and so it's
Mm.
a bunch of dunes. But thank you. I still think I have a chance at resolving it because it keeps coming up in front of me. So it's something I'm going to have to do. Yeah.
Yeah, he used to exhort us. He used to say, please cheer up, please cheer up. Like that. Who had their hand up? Somebody. Kurt.
I did. Yeah, I find this eighth Boomi so inspirational in so many ways. The playful aspect of it, but I want to refer it back to the conversation that came up a lot last week around ambition, and it seems that this is a Boomi that cuts through that, where it shifts. I want to say it from that ambition to accomplish something for ourselves to shifting it right into that place of play, and where we can step into our brilliance, and by dropping the ego and being in the pure moment, and to be able to respond. It feels like this is I hate to use the word accomplish, but this is how we can accomplish the greatness in our life, by letting go of the need to accomplish. And it's just, that Boomi just spoke to it in so many beautiful ways. And I think the way you kept coming back to play, that play feels like breath. Play can only happen in the moment. You can't think about play in the future. You can't think of play in the past. As with the breath, it only happens in the moment. And I'm really appreciating just how in depth you added to that eighth Boomi, because it was inspirational reading it, but then hearing it again really drove it home. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Really great. Yeah. What's necessary for us is to be able to see our neurosis on the one hand, and to see this open, clear state of mind that we all have on the other, so that we can make the choice. And state of play is terrific. Yeah. Thank you. Dan.
Yeah, thanks, John. It was great teaching. Like last week, it was really just wonderful teachings. It really comes alive. You make it come alive. I'm intrigued by this thing about power and about convent. I don't know if you were quoting directly from this, but it sounded like you were. Conventionally, the word power has the sense of trying to gain victory. Power is a victory over something, but in the non-theistic approach, power is based on rejoicing in fearlessness, and rather trying to conquer the world, it's being in the state of power, and it's intriguing. It's just intriguing, a state of power rather than achieving power or gaining power. One of the reasons it's so intriguing is that, as often I do and with other people in the recovery space, Bill Wilson writes in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, "We have stopped fighting everything, including alcohol." And the idea behind it is not to gain power over it, but to give it up, And by giving up the power that you want over it, it gives up the power it has over you. And I think that's just, especially seeing it here and hearing you talk about it, I think that's true of most things. And even what Vicky was saying just reminded me of that too. You know, instead of trying to conquer these problems, we, you know, that because conquering them is a way of trying to gain power over them rather than being in a state of power.
And then you're constantly in this battle.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And you're in a never-ending battle. At some point, the battle has to dissolve, has to go away.
Mhm.
As long as you want to conquer, you got to have your enemy there. That's amazing that this Bill, wow. What a guy.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's terrific. Mika,
Oops.
you're muted, Mika. Mika, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I always feel when I say something that I'm in danger of being presumptuous and talking about everything that everybody already understands. But I, in reference to the person who just spoke, so I also have a hard time moving because I always do wake up in some degree of pain. And usually the first thought I have is a depressive thought. But I've been reading this little book. I don't know if you can see it if I hold it up. But I don't know where to hold it. But anyway, it's the Pocket Tich Nhat Han, if I pronounced it right.
Yeah.
And I was looking for it in here, and he has this little space, I couldn't quite find it, where he says that every morning when you wake up, your first thought can be, I'm alive, how lucky I am to be alive, how joyful it is that I have another day, and how lucky I am to be able to have a day that I can practice in. And that I should keep this feeling of the joy and the luck of having a day with me as long as I can. And that starting every day that way is the beginning of an excellent practice. And I think of that, and it actually, it works for me. And while I was looking for that, which I couldn't find in here to quote, I came across this little thing here, which I'm just going to offer up because it was in the discussion. So when you brush your teeth, how much time can you afford for brushing your teeth? 1 minute, 2? Brush your teeth in such a way that freedom and joy are possible. Not allowing yourself to be carried away by concerns about what you will do after you are done. Think, I am standing here brushing my teeth. I still have teeth to brush. I have toothbrush and a toothpaste and a toothbrush. And my practice is to be alive and to enjoy toothbrushing. So I just throw that out. I find statements like and thoughts like this so helpful, because I tend to be of a somewhat pessimistic turn of mind. And if I just let myself think, my thoughts are always somewhat gloomy. Like, oh my God, when am I going to solve my teeth problems? Instead of, oh my God, I have something to do about my teeth. Aren't I lucky? So I just wanted to share that. I don't know if it's helpful or distracting. Thank you.
Absolutely terrific. Thank you. Thank Thich Nhat Hanh for us.
Now, I love him, having just discovered him.
Really wonderful. Yeah. I saw somebody else had their hand up here just now. Karen Sue.
So I'd like to go back to play and communication. What all of a sudden revealed itself to me is this vision of watching dogs at a dog park, and specifically 2 dogs at a dog park, and how I've watched them play and communicate. And it's so fresh and free and open and instantaneous. And that's what came to me. So I wanted to share that with you. Jane.
Thank you.
I think critters could be our teachers.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time, and a couple of people have something. I
Right.
think.
There was, I saw somebody with their hand up.
Fred,
Okay, Fred?
I once freaked out. I was in a pretty bad accident. I was in chronic pain for a while, and then I freaked out when the pain went away. That was a real mind blowing experience. It's like, whoa, that's
Huh.
not there anymore.
Huh. Huh. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, you lost your playmate. Judy, did you have something you wanted to say before we go? You're muted, Judy. Sorry. You're muted still. There you go.
there you go.
Yeah. About the power business. I think in English, the word would be empowered. EMP.
Okay.
To be empowered, which seems to me to relate to the confidence issue. Also, if you feel empowered, you're confident. And that confidence seems to ride through many of the Boomis, especially the later ones, being the last shred that has to occur. So that was interesting, very interesting. And I am so grateful for the way you make further depth to these really profound readings. You would think you can't go further, but what you add makes a big difference. So I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Privilege. So we need to end. And I have extended this invitation before, but I'm inviting you to talk to me about your practice. You're all putting in effort and time into this. And if there's anything that I can do to further and make it more successful for you, I'm happy to meet with you one-on-one. Just let me know and we'll schedule something. Okay. So I think we need to end. Terrific class. Thank you both all for everything. It's wonderful. I'll put the chants up on the screen. Dan, you're going to do it?
We will close with a prayer for peace and then the dedication of the merit earned by our practice to the benefit of all sentient beings. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times, and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world. And may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thanks, everybody. See you around.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. Thanks.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
John. Thank you so much.
So great. Good to
See
see
you all later.
everyone.
Hi, Barry.